What if the most hated man in history was not a monster, but a warning? A single kiss in the dark, 30 pieces of silver, a name forever synonymous with betrayal. For over 2,000 years, Judas Iscariot has been treated as the ultimate villain, the man who sold his teacher, the traitor beyond redemption, a symbol of pure moral failure. But Stoicism forces us to ask uncomfortable questions, not to excuse actions, not to erase responsibility, but to understand what actually breaks a human soul under pressure. Because here is the disturbing thought. Judas did not live in a mythical world. He lived in a world of fear, ambition, disappointment, expectation, and internal conflict. A world that looks uncomfortably similar to ours. What if Judas was not driven by evil intent, but by a mind that was untrained, a judgment that collapsed under pressure, a character without an inner fortress? According to Stoicism, the greatest danger is not external enemies. It is not fate. It is not hardship. The greatest danger is facing a moral test without the mental discipline to withstand it. According to Ryan Holiday, modern interpreter of Stoic philosophy, Stoicism is not about judging others. It is about understanding human weakness so we can govern ourselves with wisdom. Today, we will do something most people never dare to do. We will place Judas Iscariot on trial, not in a religious court, but in a Stoic one. Not to absolve him, not to demonize him, but to understand what truly happened when character met pressure. Because this is not just a story about a man 2,000 years ago. It is a psychological mirror, and what it reflects may be uncomfortable. This is the Stoic Lighthouse, a place where ancient wisdom illuminates modern chaos. Let the Stoic Lighthouse guide you toward peace and wisdom. If this kind of reflection challenges the way you think, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps this message reach those who need it most. Today, we will examine Judas through the Stoic principles of fate, judgment, choice, passion, and responsibility. And by the end, we will reach a verdict that forces us to confront not just his betrayal, but our own vulnerabilities. The Stoic trial begins now. Number 1. Fate in motion, Judas and the Stoic order of the universe. From the very beginning, the Stoics proposed an idea that feels deeply unsettling to the modern mind. The universe is not chaotic. It is not random. It unfolds according to an ordered chain of cause and effect, a rational structure governing all events, from the smallest detail to the rise and fall of civilizations. The Stoics called this structure the Logos. According to Zeno, founder of Stoicism, the universe operates as a single living system, bound together by reason. Nothing happens in isolation. Every event is connected to everything else, like links in an unbreakable chain. This idea forces an uncomfortable question into the story of Judas. If the crucifixion was destined to occur, as religious tradition itself suggests, then was the betrayal that triggered it also part of this causal chain? Could an event of such magnitude exist without the action that set it in motion? According to Chrysippus, the great systematizer of Stoic logic, fate does not eliminate human action. It incorporates it. Fate moves through people, not around them. Chrysippus explained this relationship using a powerful metaphor. According to Chrysippus, if a dog is tied to a cart, it may follow willingly or be dragged. Either way, the cart moves forward. In this analogy, the cart represents fate. The movement is inevitable, but the manner in which the dog moves is not. Applied to Judas, the Stoic defense would argue this. The larger event was already in motion. History was moving toward a specific outcome. Judas was not the author of the cosmic script, but a participant within it. According to Marcus Aurelius, human beings often mistake their limited perspective for the full truth of reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "All that happens is as natural as the blooming of a rose or the ripening of fruit." From this view, even actions we label as evil may serve a function within a larger order we cannot fully perceive. Darkness, in this sense, does not contradict the whole, it completes it. The Stoic scholar Anthony Arthur Long expands on this idea by explaining that events which appear destructive at the individual level may still contribute to the coherence of the universe as a whole. From this perspective, Judas becomes something deeply unsettling, not a monster acting outside reality, but a tragic instrument within it. A man positioned at the precise point where destiny and weakness intersected. Yet Stoicism does not stop here. Fate may move the cart, but it does not excuse how one chooses to walk beside it. And this is where the defense meets its limit. Because while fate may explain the situation, it does not explain the judgment that followed. And that judgment is where the Stoic lens turns inward. Number 2, not evil but mistaken, the psychology of a fatal judgment. Stoicism makes a claim that feels almost offensive to common sense. Human beings do not choose evil because they love evil. They choose what they believe is good, even when that belief is tragically wrong. Long before Stoicism took shape, Socrates planted the seed of this idea by arguing that moral failure begins in the mind, not in the heart. People act wrongly because they misunderstand what is truly worth pursuing. Socrates taught this principle clearly. Socrates stated, "No one does wrong willingly." For the Stoics, this insight became a psychological foundation. Every destructive action starts as a mistaken judgment, a false conclusion about what will bring security, satisfaction, or relief. From this perspective, Judas does not appear as a man driven by cruelty, but as a man guided by a corrupted compass. His mind identified something external as valuable, and everything else collapsed around that error. Epictetus warned that human suffering is not caused by events, but by the judgments we attach to them. Epictetus warned, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Whatever Judas believed he was gaining through betrayal, money, control, political outcome, or self-preservation, his mind labeled it as a good. And once that label was applied, the action followed naturally. One interpretation frames Judas as a man consumed by greed. In Stoic terms, this reflects a false belief that money holds moral value. To the Stoics, wealth is neither good nor bad. It is an indifferent. Elevating it above loyalty is not evil intent. It is philosophical ignorance. Another interpretation presents a more complex psychological failure. Judas may have expected a political messiah, a figure who would confront Roman power directly. When that expectation collapsed, frustration and resentment filled the vacuum. Betrayal then became a distorted attempt to force reality to match his internal narrative. Modern historian and theologian N.T. Wright has explored this dimension of disappointment and political expectation. N.T. Wright suggested, Judas may have been acting not from greed alone, but from a shattered vision of what he believed the mission was meant to be. In either case, the Stoic diagnosis remains the same. Judas was not pursuing evil. He was pursuing what his untrained reason misidentified as necessary or beneficial. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal regularly as emperor, surrounded by ambitious men and broken loyalties. His response was not hatred, but clarity. Marcus Aurelius reflected, when someone does wrong, it is because they are mistaken about what is good and bad. This does not absolve the action, but it explains its origin. A damaged judgment leads to a damaged outcome. Seen through this lens, Judas becomes a tragic example of what happens when desire outruns wisdom. His downfall was not a sudden collapse. It was the final result of unchecked beliefs, allowed to grow without philosophical discipline. The Stoic defense rests here. If Judas failed, he failed first in the mind, and that failure began long before the kiss in the garden. Number 3, the moment of choice. Loyalty, justice, and moral failure. Stoicism does not deny fate. It does not deny pressure, fear, or circumstance. But it draws a hard line at one point: choice. No matter how powerful the current, the Stoics believed that character is revealed in the moment a decision is made. Fate may shape the stage, but action belongs to the individual. This is where the Stoic prosecution enters the trial. The defense has argued ignorance and destiny. The prosecution does not dispute either. It simply insists that neither removes responsibility. Chrysippus argued that while events unfold according to fate, moral responsibility lives in prohairesis, the faculty of choice. Even when the cart moves forward, the individual decides whether to walk with dignity or be dragged. Justice, in Stoic ethics, is not abstract law. It is lived loyalty. Duty to others, faithfulness to bonds freely accepted. To violate these is not an accident of fate, it is a moral failure. Seneca spent much of his life navigating betrayal under the rule of Nero. He understood pressure intimately, yet he insisted that hardship reveals character rather than destroys it. Seneca observed, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." Judas stood at such a moment. Multiple paths existed. Silence, withdrawal, confrontation, resistance. None were easy, but all were alternatives to betrayal. The Stoics often pointed to exemplars to clarify ethical boundaries. One such figure was Portia Catonis, daughter of Cato the Younger. Living in a world of political violence and moral compromise, she demonstrated unwavering loyalty and self-command even under extreme threat. Her life served as proof that virtue is possible even when circumstances are merciless. Cato the Younger himself faced a fate he could not escape. The fall of the Roman Republic was inevitable. Yet when offered safety at the cost of principle, he refused. His death was not an escape, but a final assertion of moral agency. Modern Stoic writer Ryan Holiday highlights this contrast clearly. Ryan Holiday emphasized, "Cato reminds us that we always have a choice over who we are, even when we do not control what happens." Judas also had a choice. Fate may have positioned him at the crossroads. Ignorance may have clouded his thinking, but the act itself belonged to him. By choosing betrayal, he violated the Stoic virtue of justice at its core. He placed an external outcome above loyalty, trust, and moral consistency. In Stoic terms, this is the line that cannot be crossed. Circumstance explains the pressure, ignorance explains the confusion, but the decision defines the character. And in that moment, Judas failed the test. Number 4. A man ruled by desire, greed, guilt, and collapse. Stoicism draws a sharp distinction between reason and passion. When reason governs, the soul is stable. When passion takes control, the soul fragments. The Stoics use the word pathe to describe destructive emotional states, not emotions themselves, but emotions that overpower judgment. Desire without restraint, fear without perspective, guilt without wisdom. Judas appears in the historical record not as a calm participant in destiny, but as a man increasingly ruled by these forces. Ancient accounts describe him as the keeper of the group's money, a role that quietly fed a dangerous attachment. To the Stoics, this detail matters. Repeated exposure to temptation without discipline erodes character over time. Musonius Rufus, one of the most practical Stoic teachers, insisted that moral weakness is not sudden. It is trained through habit. Musonius Rufus taught, "The soul is strengthened or corrupted by what it practices daily." Greed, in Stoic ethics, is not merely a desire for wealth. It is a belief error. It is the conviction that something external has the power to complete you. Once that belief takes root, virtue becomes negotiable. Epictetus warned that the person who ties their happiness to externals becomes fragile, easily controlled, and internally enslaved. Epictetus warned, Whoever wants to be free must make no attachment to things that lie outside their control. Judas did the opposite. He allowed desire to dictate value. 30 pieces of silver became more than money. They became a justification. But the collapse did not end with greed. When the consequences of his action became undeniable, Judas did not respond with reflection or correction. He responded with despair. This distinction is critical in Stoic psychology. The Stoic does not deny error, but error is met with analysis, adjustment, and renewed commitment to virtue. Despair, by contrast, is another passion. It is the refusal to endure the weight of one's own responsibility. William B. Irvine makes this distinction explicit when discussing regret and resilience. William B. Irvine explained, "The Stoic learns from failure without being destroyed by it." Judas could not endure that weight. He returned the money, not as an act of wisdom, but as an attempt to escape internal torment. His final act was not reasoned withdrawal, but emotional collapse. The Stoics did accept what they called a rational exit from life, but only when continued existence made virtue impossible. Judas's death was not this. It was not clarity. It was surrender to passion. His tragedy was not the betrayal alone. It was the absence of an inner structure strong enough to absorb the consequences of his own actions. Without discipline, desire ruled him. Without philosophy, guilt crushed him. And without an inner compass, he had nowhere left to stand. Number 5, the Stoic verdict. Guilty by action, tragic by ignorance. The trial now reaches its center. The arguments have been laid bare. Fate has been examined. Psychology has been dissected. Choice and passion have been weighed. Stoicism does not offer sentimental verdicts. It does not soften reality to ease discomfort. Its judgments are precise and often uncomfortable. From the perspective of action, the verdict is clear. Judas is guilty. Stoic ethics is grounded in responsibility. External forces may shape conditions, but moral evaluation rests on what the individual chooses to do with them. Judas committed the act. He violated trust. He broke the bond of loyalty freely entered into. No theory of fate erases that. Marcus Aurelius confronted betrayal as a daily reality of leadership, yet he never confused understanding with excuse. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "When you're offended by someone's wrongdoing, turn inward and ask what false judgment led them to act this way." This reflection does not erase accountability, it sharpens it. From the Stoic perspective, Judas failed in justice, the virtue that governs our obligations to others. He elevated an external outcome above moral integrity. By Stoic standards, this is vice. Yet Stoicism refuses to stop at surface judgment. When the focus shifts from action to intention, the verdict deepens. Judas did not act from a desire to destroy goodness itself. He acted from ignorance, a mind corrupted by false beliefs about value, control, and reward. Zeno taught that virtue is knowledge in action. Where knowledge is absent, error follows. Zeno asserted, "Virtue is the only good because it is the only thing that cannot be misused." Judas lacked this knowledge. He did not possess a philosophical framework capable of testing his impulses. Without that framework, his judgment collapsed under pressure. The Stoic court therefore delivers a dual verdict: guilty of the act, tragic in its origin. Judas was not a demon acting outside humanity. He was a human being who faced a moral test without the tools to endure it. His failure was not extraordinary. That is what makes it disturbing. Stoicism does not ask us to hate such figures. It asks us to study them, because the true danger is not the existence of weakness. It is the illusion that we are immune to it. Number 6. The Judas within us. Why this story still haunts the modern mind. Once stripped of myth and distance, the story of Judas stops being historical. It becomes psychological. Stoicism teaches that the most dangerous errors are not dramatic acts of betrayal, but the quiet decisions that precede them. Character does not collapse in a single moment, it erodes. Heraclitus, a pre-Stoic thinker deeply respected by later Stoics, warned that human character is shaped by repeated patterns of thought. Heraclitus observed, "Character is destiny." Judas did not become a traitor in one night. He became one gradually. Each time desire outweighed principle. Each time resentment went unexamined. Each time comfort was chosen over clarity. Stoicism insists that the same mechanism operates in modern life. Every time someone compromises honesty for convenience, they rehearse betrayal. Every time loyalty is traded for approval, the habit strengthens. Every time fear overrides conscience, character weakens. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger intimately. His meditations were not written for history, but for survival under pressure. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This is why the story of Judas unsettles us. Not because it is extreme, but because it is familiar. The Stoics believe that moral failure is rarely caused by villains. It is caused by ordinary people who neglect the daily discipline of examining their judgments. This lesson applies regardless of power, wealth, or circumstance. Hipparchia of Maronea, one of the few recorded women philosophers of the Stoic tradition, rejected comfort and reputation to live according to principle. Her life stood as a direct challenge to the belief that virtue depends on favorable conditions. Her example reinforces a core Stoic truth. Integrity is not situational, it is practiced. The question Judas leaves behind is not whether we would betray under extraordinary pressure. It is whether we are training our minds to withstand ordinary temptation. Stoicism does not ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be vigilant, because the greatest betrayals rarely announce themselves. They arrive disguised as reasonable exceptions, and the unexamined mind rarely notices the difference. The Stoic judgment of Judas Iscariot leaves us with an uncomfortable clarity. His tragedy was not the kiss, it was not the silver, it was not even the public shame that followed. His true tragedy was facing a decisive moment without an inner compass strong enough to guide him through it. Stoicism teaches that life will test everyone. Pressure is unavoidable. Temptation is inevitable. Disappointment will come. What determines the outcome is not the test itself, but whether the mind has been trained before the test arrives. Seneca warned that a life without philosophical grounding becomes fragile under stress. Seneca wrote, "No man can live a happy life, or even a tolerable one, without the study of wisdom." Judas lacked that foundation. When desire pulled him in one direction and fear in another, he had no framework to examine his judgments, no discipline to pause, no inner structure to resist. His failure was not sudden, it was structural. Stoicism does not ask us to condemn him with hatred, it asks us to learn from him with honesty. Because the greatest betrayal is not against a teacher, a friend, or a cause. It is against the person we know we could become. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger more than most. Marcus Aurelius reflected, "The loss of character is the only real loss." This single idea captures the entire Stoic verdict. Judas did not lose money, reputation, or even life first. He lost command over his own character, and everything else followed. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe Judas was fully responsible for his actions, or do you see him as a tragic example of untrained judgment and unchecked desire? Leave your reflection in the comments. This conversation is far from simple, and your perspective matters. If this analysis challenged the way you think, take a moment to like the video. Share it with someone who enjoys deep psychological and philosophical discussions. And if you are not yet part of this community, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The Stoic Lighthouse exists to bring ancient wisdom into modern chaos. In the next video, we will explore how a Roman emperor trained his mind so deeply that adversity, criticism, and inner turmoil lost their power over him. A mental discipline so practical that once you understand it, you will never approach your thoughts, emotions, or challenges the same way again. Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote, "The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." See you in the next video.